Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Shazam, Fury of the Gods in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Shazam. Fury of the Gods, we will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it. All the interesting facts about this movie in today's video I'm going to tell you. I'm also going to give you all the information on which OT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office, collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, starcast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. Shazam! Fury of the Gods is a 2023 American superhero film based on the DC character Shazam. Produced by New Line Cinema, DC Films, and the Safran Company, and distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures, it is the sequel to Shazam 2019 and the 12th installment in the DC Extended Universe. Directed by David F. Sandberg and written by Henry Gayden and Chris Morgan, it stars Zachary Levi, Asher Angel, Grace Caroline Curry, Jack Dylan Grazer, Rachel Zegler, Adam Brody, Ross Butler, Megan Good, Lucy Liu, Jaimin Hounsou, and Helen Mirren. The plot follows Billy Batson Shazam and his foster siblings as they fight the Daughters of Atlas to save the Earth. A sequel to Shazam began development shortly after its release in April 2019, with Gayden returning as writer and Morgan joining soon after to revise Gayden's screenplay. Sandberg and Levi Shazam were also set to return by that December. The title and the rest of the returning cast were confirmed in August 2020, with Zegler, Mirren, and Liu cast as the Daughters of Atlas in early 2021. Filming began that May in Atlanta, Georgia, and concluded in August. Shazam! Fury of the Gods premiered at the Fox Village Theater in Los Angeles on March 14, 2023, and was released in the United States on March 17. The film received mixed reviews from critics who considered it inferior to its predecessor. It was a box office bomb, grossing $134 million worldwide against a production budget of $110 to $125 million. Plot: 2 years after Thaddeus Sivana's defeat, Hespera and Calypso, daughters of the Titan Atlas, break into the Acropolis Museum in Athens to steal the wizard's broken staff. Taking it to the wizard, imprisoned in the god's realm, they force him to repair it and reactivate its powers. In Philadelphia, Billy Batson and his Shazamily are drifting apart as they grow up and pursue their interests. Billy is worried about being kicked out of the Vasquez family home when he turns 18. In a dream, the wizard warns him about the Daughters of Atlas, prompting the Shazamily to research them. The Shazamily enter the Rock of Eternity, where they encounter the sentient pen Steve. It writes about the 3 Daughters of Atlas, and they realize that Anthea, Atlas's youngest daughter, is none other than a girl named Anne. She is someone Freddie Freeman is going to meet. When Freddie meets Anne, he shows off his superhero self. Hespera and Calypso arrive with the staff and steal his powers. Billy and the Shazamily try to save Freddie, but the daughters kidnap him, encasing the city within an indestructible dome and trapping everyone inside. He is subsequently imprisoned within the wizard in the god's realm. The Shazamily asks Steve to help draft a letter to negotiate with Hespera for Freddie's release. Billy meets her at a local restaurant and, although the meeting is initially cordial, she and Calypso soon fight the Shazamily. Pedro loses his powers during the battle, while Hespera is captured and taken to the Rock. Having planned her capture, Hespera easily breaks out and steals the golden apple, the seed of the Tree of Life. Meanwhile, Freddie and the wizard attempt to escape the god's realm with the sympathetic Anthea's help, just as Hespera returns with the apple. The daughters argue as Hespera and Anthea want to use the apple to revive their realm, while Calypso wishes to plant it on Earth to destroy it. Freddie steals it but is soon discovered. Billy and the Shazamily show up, and Freddie reacquires his powers. Billy and the Shazamily emerge with the wizard at the Vasquez home, where they reveal their secret identities to their foster parents. Calypso appears with the dragon Ladon to acquire the apple and destroy the Vasquez house. The Shazamily attempts to keep the apple away from Calypso, but everyone except Billy loses their powers in the skirmish. Calypso retrieves it, using it to plant the tree at Citizens Bank Park. It then spawns various monsters to attack the city. Hespera and Anthea object to their sister's destructive plan, but Calypso mortally wounds Hespera and depowers Anthea. Billy, in despair, asks the wizard to revoke his powers, but the wizard assures him that he is a true hero and so worthy of them. Heeding the wizard's words, Billy flies off to stop Calypso, while the Shazamily enlists the help of dark unicorns to fend off the other monsters. Billy persuades a dying Hespera to help him stop Calypso. Realizing the dome reacts violently to his lightning, Billy lures Calypso to the park while Hespera shrinks the dome to contain them. Billy sacrifices himself to stop Calypso and Ladon by overloading the staff with electricity and destroying the tree and Calypso's army with it. Hespera acknowledges him as a true god before succumbing to her wounds, causing the dome to disappear. Anthea takes Billy's grieving family to the god's realm for his burial. Diana Prince, known as Wonder Woman, appears and repairs the staff. Imbuing it with her power, she uses it to revive the god's realm, restore Anthea's powers, and resurrect Billy. Billy, in turn, uses the staff to restore his siblings' powers. The Shazamily rebuild their home while Anthea and Freddy start a relationship, and the wizard takes up residence on Earth. In a mid-credits scene, Amelia Harcourt and John Economos invite Billy into the Justice Society on behalf of Amanda Waller, but Billy declines. In a post-credits scene, a still-incarcerated Savannah encounters Mr. Mind once again, enraged that he has not begun enacting their plan. Cast. Further information: List of DC Extended Universe cast members and characters of the DC Extended Universe. Zachary Levi and Asher Angel as Billy Batson. The champion of an ancient wizard who possesses the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury. Jack Dylan Grazer and Adam Brody as Freddie Freeman. Billy's physically disabled foster brother, who is a fan of superheroes. Grazer portrays Freddie's regular form, while Brody portrays his adult superhero form. Helen Mirren as Hespera, the oldest daughter of Atlas, who has elemental abilities. Lucy Liu as Calypso, the middle daughter of Atlas, who has the power of chaos. Rachel Zegler as Anthea Ann, the youngest daughter of Atlas, who has the power of Axis and Freddie's love interest. Ross Butler and Ian Chen as Eugene Choi. Billy's younger foster brother, who is an obsessive gamer. Butler portrays Eugene's adult superhero form, while Chen portrays his regular form. DJ Catrona and Jovan Armand as Pedro Pena. Billy's older foster brother, who is shy, sensitive, and later revealed to be gay. Catrona portrays Pedro's adult superhero form, while Armand portrays his regular form. Grace Caroline Curry as Mary Bromfield. Billy's mature and academically driven older foster sister. Curry also portrays Mary's adult superhero form, replacing Michelle Borth from the first film. Megan Good and Faith Herman as Darla Dudley. Billy's good-natured younger foster sister. Good portrays Darla's adult superhero form, while Herman portrays her regular form. Jaimin Hounsou as Shazam, the last surviving member of the Council of Wizards, who bestowed his powers on Billy Batson after designating the boy as his champion. Billy's foster family also includes Marta Mylans and Cooper Andrews as Rosa and Victor Vasquez, the foster parents of Billy and his siblings. Reprising their DCEU roles in the film while uncredited, Gal Gadot appears as Diana Prince Wonder Woman, alongside Jennifer Holland as Amelia Harcourt and Steve Agee as John Economos in the mid-credits scene, and Mark Strong as Dr. Thaddeus Savannah and director David F. Sandberg as the voice of Mr. Mind in the post-credits scene. Sandberg also cameos as a civilian who is attacked by one of Calypso's monsters. Rizwan Manji, who portrayed Jamil in the DCEU television series Peacemaker, appears as an unnamed Docent P. Byrne briefly appears as Dr. Dario Bava, a pediatrician whom Billy confused as a therapist, while Diedrich Bader briefly appears as Mr. Geckel, a school teacher. Sandberg's wife, Lotta Lawston, who previously portrayed Dr. Lynn Crosby in the first film, cameos as a nurse who is saved by Shazam. Michael Gray, who portrayed Billy Batson in the 1970s television series, makes a brief cameo as a man on the street, calling the transformed Billy Captain Marvel. Natalia Safran, wife of producer Peter Safran, cameos as a driver with kittens. CNN News anchor Wolf Blitzer makes a cameo appearance as himself. Music. Main article: Shazam! Fury of the Gods soundtrack. In June 2022, Sandberg revealed that composer and conductor Benjamin Wallfisch was unable to return from the first film due to scheduling conflicts with another DCEU film, The Flash, 2023. His replacement, Christoph Beck, had already begun work by then. A single, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, main title theme, was released as a digital single by Water Tower Music on February 23, 2023, and the soundtrack album was released on March 10th. Reception. Box office. Shazam! Fury of the Gods grossed $57.6 million in the United States and Canada and $76.4 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $134 million. Due to its $125 million production budget, the film was labeled a box office bomb by analysts. In the United States and Canada, Shazam! Fury of the Gods was initially projected to gross $35 to $40 million from 4,071 theaters in its opening weekend. The film made $11.7 million on Friday, including $3.4 million from Thursday night previews, lowering weekend estimates to $30 million. It went on to debut to $30.1 million, 52.2% of total gross, topping the box office but marking a 44% drop from the first film's opening weekend, $53.5 million, and the third lowest of the DCEU, though the two lower films, The Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman 1984, had their releases affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and were simultaneously released on HBO Max. Box office pros Sean Robbins called the debut a soft start. There's no other way to put it, noting the recent underperformances of other comic book films. The Hollywood Reporter called the domestic opening one of the worst starts for a major Hollywood superhero film, and also lamented the film's $35 million international opening from 78 countries, including bombing in China with $4.3 million. The AV Club noted that it premiered on a weekend where other films experienced dull box office numbers. In its second weekend, the film dropped 69% to $9.3 million, finishing second behind newcomer John Wick Chapter 4. It made $4.6 million in its third weekend, dropping to sixth place. Why did they give Zachary Levi a haircut for Shazam! Fury of the Gods? 4 years ago, in the first Shazam, Levi played a kid in a superhero's body, and the movie was smart and witty enough to come off as a caped version of Big. Levi's look was a major part of it. Shazam, with that cheesy lightning bolt and gold belt and white Italian restaurant tablecloth of a cape, didn't resemble other recent comic book film heroes. He was more like something out of the 40s. And Levi sealed the deal. Was his big popping eyes and ingenuous gee-whiz grin? He was, after all, playing a 14-year-old inside, as well as the hair that topped off his boyish spirit. It was dark and shiny and stood up 1.5 inches from his head, a do as superhero stylized in its way as the old Superman's. In Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Levi is back, a little older inside. Shazam's alter ego, the foster kid Billy Batson, is now pushing 18. But that comic disconnect between the bulked-up dude in his red suit with his limitless powers and the teenager who's in over his head is still somewhat on display. Levi once again carries the movie, though with a shade less of that infectious buoyancy. His hair has been tweaked into a slightly shorter, more conventional cut. From certain angles, it's almost a fade. And while the difference isn't huge, and it may sound like I'm carping over nothing, the new hair changes his aura. He seems less wide-eyed, less winningly goofy, less stylized. That's true of the movie as well. Fury of the Gods is one of those superhero sequels that goes through the paces, presenting us with a story that's meticulously convoluted and weightless, only to ratchet up the CGI as if that were the film's way of testifying to its major popcorn moviness. Plenty of comic book sequels do that, of course, but the first Shazam was a special case. It had a breezy, screw-loose charm that felt not so much superhuman as good old human. It somehow sidestepped the digitally tooled blockbuster cynicism, but Fury of the Gods falls right into it. The film isn't terrible, but it's busy, formulaic, and rather joyless. The Shazam saga has been given an expensive haircut, but it's lost a lot of its flavor in the process. Part of that is it's a tough encore to bring off. Origin stories can be stage setters, with the more exciting action yet to come. Just think of Batman Begins relative to The Dark Knight. But sometimes the origin story is the main course. Shazam was about Billy trying to wrap his teenage head around the fact that he was a superhero, gifted with unimaginable powers from Djimon Hounsou's wizard. He spent the heart of the movie figuring out how to use those powers, and also, like an urchin delinquent Clark Kent, keeping his vulnerable identity under wraps. Now that the cat is out of the bag, and Shazam has been joined by his entire house full of foster kids turned superheroes, they're a bit like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a blander junior Justice League. Asher Angel as Billy is older now, but he's further from the center of the movie, almost an adjunct character. Our heroes are still going up against world-class villains, at least if you look at the casting. Helen Mirren, Lucy Liu, and Rachel Zegler play Hespera, Calypso, and Anthea, the daughters of Atlas, who have come to Earth to take back the power of the gods from Shazam and his crew, who in their view stole that power. You'd think that Helen Mirren, a true I-could-listen-to-her-read-the-phone-book actor if we still had phone books, could make something out of this, but as soon as Hespera and Calypso make their entrance, hidden under knights' helmets in a museum, where they've come to steal a broken magic staff from its exhibition case, the two come off like troublemakers on an ominous but generic mission. The script, co-written by Henry Gayden, who wrote the first film, and Chris Morgan, who has written 6 of the 9 Fast and Furious films, doesn't allow Mirren to cut loose the way Cate Blanchett did in Thor Ragnarok, or Mark Strong did in Shazam. A tasty villain in a comic book movie doesn't have to scale the visionary heights of Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, but he or she should sustain a certain tasty depth of evil ego. Mirren, I'm sorry, is wasted, and so is Lucy Liu, whose chill ferocity is reduced to a kind of one-note snit fit. Rachel Zegler from West Side Story has a more complicated role, with more of a relationship to our heroes, but that too should have been further developed. Anthea's interactions with Freddy, Jack Dylan Grazer, the foster nerd who walks with a cane, have a high school comedy vividness reminiscent of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. David F. Sandberg, the director of the first Shazam, is back, and this is the place you can feel his puckish spirit. But that soon falls by the wayside. Besides, how much can we care about a magic staff that looks like a stage prop witch's broomstick with an energy-saving light bulb inside? Fear not, there is also a golden apple and a dome placed over Philadelphia, and there are monsters, starting with a dragon that pops up for no good reason. In its spindly way, it looks like it came out of the same wood shop that crafted Groot and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. There is also an explosion of what look like giant grapevines, also wood-like, out of the pods of which erupt a crew of beasties, a gnashing cyclops, a gnashing griffin, and more gnashers. And there are unicorns, but not rainbow-colored angelic ones, dark and sturdy ones that look like stallions. By the time all these creatures have shown up, we feel like we need a flowchart to calculate the hierarchy of power. Magic staff, beasties, unicorns equals dragon. The villains are defeated, the mythology is fulfilled, but the real story here is that a superhero saga that seemed to hold out possibilities of life-size quirkiness and delight winds up getting squashed into the shape of any other superhero franchise. The force that does that is the true power that needs to be defeated. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, arrives with 2 strikes against it since it's not only a studio-produced sequel, but also a superhero movie made in 2023. One should expect a certain level of creative committee-mandated mad-libsy monotony, regardless of how one feels about the surprisingly decent Shazam. The makers of that fine enough 2019 franchise starter, including director David F. Sandberg, toned down both the Troma-light cynicism and post-Spielberg sentimentality that's come to define the lighthearted James Gunn-style super projects that dominate the landscape. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, meanders further in that direction. The first Shazam works as well as it does because it's mostly focused on 2 adolescent pipsqueaks, Billy Batson, Asher Angel, and Freddie Freeman, Jack Dylan Grazer, who get sucked into a generic fantasy with some assistance from their extended family of orphan buddies. Shazam! Fury of the Gods mostly sticks to the comic book formula that the first movie poked fun at, despite another strong comedic performance from star Zachary Levi and some sporadic yucks throughout. It's stickier and less assured than the first Shazam, but these leftovers still reheat well enough. Billy, Freddy, and their foster family members return to fight the latest vengeful dangling plot thread, this time a trio of vindictive sorceresses called the Daughters of Atlas, led by Hespera, Helen Mirren, and Calypso Lucy Liu, who want to avenge their father, Atlas, not in this picture. The identity of the third daughter is briefly shrouded in mystery. Billy's anxieties speak loudest for the Marvel family, as comics fans know them, a convivial group of tweens whom, after yelling the magic word Shazam, are granted godlike superpowers. But even the residents of Philadelphia, where most of Shazam! Fury of the Gods takes place, don't seem to know who these kids are. They refer to the Marvels as the Philly Fiascos, presumably because you can't successfully brand a DC Comics character as a Marvel anything. Billy also longs to know what his superhero name is. He gets some answers after he unexpectedly reunites with his grumpy Gurush mentor, the wizard, Jaimin Hounsou, who somehow survived the events of the first Shazam! Don't worry if you forgot this last plot point. Billy and Freddy repeatedly joke about it. That kind of pre-chewed humor is only charming because it's finessed by the movie's ensemble cast members, especially the actors who play the punchy, adult-age demigods that Billy and his family become when they say the magic word. Levi, who plays Billy's alter ego Shazam, also known as Captain Marvel, and Adam Brody, who plays Super Freddy, aka Captain Marvel Jr., Elvis's favorite super guy, both stand out as adolescents struggling with thankless grown-up feelings and responsibilities. The movie's adult villains don't stand out, though Mirren still smirks like a champ. There are signs of a warmer and cleverer adolescent superdrama throughout Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Clearly enunciated and frantically declaimed dialogue hints at Billy's prevailing fear of aging out of his family, especially now that he's about to turn 18 years old. His other family members also have lives to live, but we only catch glimpses of them whenever the plot stalls long enough to highlight likable but underdeveloped supporting characters, like the unicorn-loving Darla, Faith Herman, or the closeted Pedro, Jovan Armand, both of whom graze the heartstrings with focus group-level efficiency. Shazam! Fury of the Gods might have been better if it were more focused on both Billy and Freddy and their hormonal anxieties. Billy dreams of wooing Wonder Woman in 2 scenes, and Freddy's got a crush on new girl Anthea, Rachel Zegler, who sadly has no chemistry with Grazer. Billy keeps saying he's all about family, but maybe he should focus on feuding with his surrogate brother and wrestling with his superego. That worked before, so why not an encore? Most of the big emotional moments lack cornball vigor, though Levi still takes all the extra room he's given to create a goofy character who, like an actual teenager, doesn't have a filter or an indoor voice. This makes up for some things, especially in a movie where the big action scenes mostly sit there, and the gags need to be both sped up and punched up. You have to want to hang out with the Philly Fiascos, and Levi's arguably the best combination of main character and lead performer in a recent superhero pick. It's too bad there are several other characters in this movie. Honestly, Captain Marvel's a tough character to get right, and if DC still can't nail a sunny or functionally grimdark Superman movie, what hope does Levi's Big Red Cheese have of surviving the latest DC implosion? The odds never really favored another live-action Shazam, but this new one will still do in a pinch. Review: Shazam! Fury of the Gods. The first Shazam movie from 2019 was praised for its lighter, brighter worldview, its Gen Z brio, and for being generally unencumbered by the portentous and spurious gloom of earlier DC films. This is true of this sequel too, only it's hard not to notice that it could simply be fitting into another boilerplate model. There's a cheeky gag about the Avengers. A group of superheroes, all with cartoony character traits and a sprinkling of funny lines, wind up battling an intergalactic invasive menace, culminating in the usual spectacular but unserious CGI urban apocalypse, with people saying things like, "This ends tonight." Billy Batson, played by Asher Angel, is the teen kid in Philadelphia living with foster parents and foster siblings who, with the cry of Shazam, has the ability to transform himself into a clean-cut but anxious superhero whose imposter syndrome worries are not helped by the fact that he often makes an awful mess of crime fighting. He is played by Zachary Levi with the chiseled look of Mad Men's Don Draper. With him is disabled friend Freddie Freeman, played by Jack Dylan Grazer, who, like all the kids, has a superhero alter ego. His is smirkingly self-aware Captain Everypower Adam Brody. Interestingly, it is Freddie who appears almost always as his vulnerable non-superhero teen self, and so upstages Billy Shazam. Billy and his friends must battle two Greek gods, daughters of Atlas, who want absolute control over planet Earth. They are Hespera and Calypso, played by Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, with their own absurd outfits and pointy headdresses. Back in high school, Freddie is being bullied by giant blonde jocks, but falls hard for new classmate Anthea, Rachel Zegler from Spielberg's West Side Story, who has a secret of her own. This new Shazam film is cordial, with a puppyish good nature and an awareness of its own silliness. It gestures towards diversity with a gay character, although we might not stop at one as the Shazam franchise develops. There are some nice lines here, and Mirren, Liu, and Jimon Hounsou, as the ancient wizard, have some fun with their roles, albeit while looking as if the subject of what they're having for supper after the day's shooting isn't far from their minds. I have to say that we don't entirely break free of the superhero movie template, but Shazam 2 has a just-out-of-the-fridge orange juice taste that makes it likable, the seed of life, and are used to plant more trees. Of life which on this world at least sprout forth various Greek monsters, including minotaurs, cyclopses, harpies, and manticores. Furthermore, we'll see some magical powers used. Calypso's power of chaos causes people to turn into zombie-like creatures, spreading the chaos to others. A man casts an incantation on a splinter of wood. There's also a sentient pen and books that flap around like birds. The dragon is said to emanate fear from its body. Additionally, because of his courage and powers, Billy is referred to as a true god by a few people, including another god. People talk about ambrosia. People lose their powers through magic, sexual romantic content. Pedro, one of Billy's foster brothers, comes out as gay. We see him looking at a magazine that contains a man in his underwear, and he later admits his homosexual attractions to his family, who tell him they were already aware. Billy's mother, Rosa, is seen in a revealing nightgown. His father, Victor, is seen in boxers. A marble statue in the museum is of a man, and his genitals are very briefly visible. Billy has a dream that he's on a date with Wonder Woman, and he calls to himself and Wonder Woman the hottie. Later, he tells Wonder Woman that he's about to turn 18 if she can wait for him. Billy says that the city of brotherly love is getting a little moist, and others tell him that he needs to work on his word choice. Freddie makes a remark that one of his bullies has chlamydia. Spoiler warning, Freddie shares a kiss with the girl. Just before the kiss, she tells him that she's actually about 6,000 years old. Because of that fact, Victor comments on the kiss, calling it a bit inappropriate, violent content. The crew of Sham, siblings, and the daughters of Atlas face off in many battles, typically resulting in the near-invulnerable people being slammed through concrete. Plenty of people die, including a museum full of people who are turned into chaos zombies. The change causes their bodies to convulse before they transform. Eventually, they're turned into statues by the daughters, and one of them is tipped over and shattered. During that scene, one man is thrown into a glass display, and another is thrown head first into a marble wall with a force strong enough to cause a heavy indent in the wall. A man possessed by the chaos magic is compelled against his will to commit suicide by jumping off the side of a building. We hear the resulting thump as he hits the ground. A woman is impaled by the scorpion tail of a manticore. Harpies lift people high into the sky and drop them to their assumed demise. Someone is stabbed through the chest. A man is choked to death. A Cyclops is pierced by a unicorn horn. A dragon destroys many buildings. And we see the badly bruised and beaten corpse. A man pulls a long, thick splinter of wood that's wedged under his fingernail in one scene that caused our viewing audience to collectively grimace. Bullies hit Freddy in the head with a football and knock him to the ground with a punch. Freddy's face is additionally slammed into the ground. A bridge collapses and general peril ensues. Though people seem generally unharmed, some cars are crushed, but they appear to be empty. Cars slam into a force field at high speed. Tree roots steer up a city. Beings and creatures sometimes die with their bodies turning to dust and blowing away. Crude or profane language, the young Darla nearly uses the F word, preceded by mother. Once the full word is drowned out by the surrounding chaos, the sword is heard 5 times. DC's used once. We also hear a handful of instances of odd dot. God's name is used in vain 13 times, including 3 times where someone says Jen. Characters say variations of suckballs a handful of times. Drug alcohol. Content. Mary, the oldest of the foster siblings, is visibly suffering the effects of a hangover. In one scene, when Victor asks what the kids are doing, Freddy sarcastically responds, probably drugs. Other note for the elements. Someone talks about using magic to turn into a gaseous form so they can fly out of here like a fart. A. Woman walks in on a man while he's using the toilet. The odor from a portable toilet becomes both the plot point and a running joke. Conclusion. I'll be honest. The pagan, and specifically Greek, gods make up perhaps the least believable religion humans have ever seriously come up with. And yet those are the deity as a sham fury of the gods tells its audience to accept. As it turns out, the reason why you haven't been struck down by Zeus' lightning bolt is because some human wizards locked him, and every other deity living on or near Mount Olympus into their own realm, making them no longer able to interfere in the lives of humans. But when that seal is broken, Atlas' daughters return to punish humanity and bring the gods back to their former glory. That spiritual side is what's going to be the biggest pill to swallow if you're thinking about watching the Shama sequel. Granted, the first film had some definite spiritual problems, syncretizing some Christian and pagan elements together to create some baddies for Billy Batson to battle. But the Fury of the Gods certainly raises those issues a few rungs higher on the content ladder. Also packaged in the sequel are a few frightening and violent scenes that mimic some of the more violent moments of the first movie, including a man who is compelled by magic to commit suicide and a museum of people who are turned to stone. Further injected into the film are 2 brief moments where one character indicates his attraction to Mina, which felt to me like he Fury of the Gods, so wanted to gain some social credit by having a gay character than anything else. And in terms of swearing, you can expect the notch to be turned slightly up on that too, with a partially uttered F word in a similar number of they. Swords to the previous film amidst other swears. Yes, A Fury of the Gods continues its lovely story of Billy Batson's family and their unconditional love for one another. It also talks about sacrifice and how it doesn't take having superpowers to be a hero. But those messages ultimately come second to the film's deep dive into pagan belief. There's been an air of uncertainty surrounding Shame as we gear up for his second outing. The first film was generally well-liked, having delivered a comedy superhero film that is equal parts funny and exciting. Then the Sue reboot gets announced with Superman, Wonder Woman, and more being struck off the slate. Sham has a second movie in the can, but we've had no confirmation as to whether or not this is a final adventure. It's not unlike Sham's alter, Ego Billy Angel facing an uncertain future as he approaches the end of high school and ages out of the foster system. The one thing he can do is keep his family of superheroes together, frequently enforcing an all-or-nothing approach to heroics, as you'd expect. As much as Billy pushes to keep his siblings together, they seek more space. Freddy Grazer wants to take some solo outings as his alter ego, a Captain Every Power Brody, and has a budding romance with new classmate Anna Ziegler. A Sham Fury of the Godso feels more like Freddy's movie than Billy's, with the character scoring much more screen time, developing new relationships and deals. With more grounded conflicts, Billy spends much more of the film in his superhero form of Sham Levy A, which is how I'm going to refer to him, as they're continuing the nameless hero gag from the first film. Billy's desire to keep his family intact gets more play as Freddy dealing with an overbearing brother. It's not all teen drama, though, as the daughters of Atlas Hera, Mirren, and Calypso Lou have claimed the magical staff left broken by Shah in the previous movie. With this artifact in hand, they have the opportunity to take the powers off Sham and his family and use it dressed to war their own world. These two are a good choice of villain, being able to meet Sham on his level without just being an evil version of the hero. Looking at you, Marvel, they have their own unique abilities along with Greek god-level strength and durability. The power of the Axis makes for some especially cool visuals, and the battles between the sisters and the heroes manage to sell the immense power behind their punches. Rolling out a menagerie of monsters from Greek mythology is a bonus, even if it comes with one of the most egregious product placements we've seen in a while. This is a really fun continuation of the characters we were introduced to Ina Sham. Spending more time with the entire superhero family is very welcome, as are the new challenges they must face. With so many more characters in the mix, it feels like they couldn't work in as much comedy this time around. There are some laugh out loud moments, many courtesy of new character Steve, but they only crop up every now and then. I'm not a fan of the new costume design, with the hood being removed and the chest emblem looking less dynamic. It's not terrible, but isn't as striking as it used to be. Shazam, Zachary Levi, as well as the rest of his family of superheroes, have been labeled by the media as the Philadelphia fiascos due to their almost childlike nit copyright in handling crisis situations. They may save lives, but they also cause a lot of property damage. Little does the world know that this is because they are all on the inside, really just teenagers who were given their powers only a few years ago, as seen in Sham 2019. Due to Sham's unwitting destruction of the gay wizard staff, the barrier between our realm and the one of Greek mythology has vanished. This mistake allows Calypso, Lucy Liu, Hayes Pera, Helen Mirren, and Anthea, Rachel Ziegler, also known as the Otters of Atlas, to visit Earth and wreak death and destruction. But what are the A-Goddess's ultimate goal? Will the family of superheroes be able to thwart their sinister plans? And what will happen to Sham's alter ego, or rather the teen within him? Billy bats an Asher Angel as he is about to turn 18 and must leave his foster family. The plot of Sham Fury of the Gods is straightforward, and all subplots few that they are tie back to either Shyam's family or the aforementioned Day Daughters of Atlas. Similar to DC films of late, the movie showcases the barest amount of exposition needed in order to transition to the next lengthy fight scene, and features much material worth mentioning. Moderate A God's Name is taken in vain 7 times with an additional 2 GDs. Within the extra credit scenes, the Expel was used 3 times, and twice the subject of a true God was discussed, neither of which was referring to the actual Almighty. In the context of mythology, talk of a gods and a goddesses appeared 19 times. Violence, very heaven, while Shaman Fury of the Gods is a bloodless film. It features a heavy dose of mindless and sometimes graphic violence. People are seen bludgeoned, crushed, squeezed, burned, stabbed, thrown from great heights. And although no people are shown inside the cars, many vehicles are shown falling into the yard, bay, or are tossed, thrown, or crushed during the film's climax. One kid screams bloody murder as he fights off his possession by Calypso. 2 scenes, one depicting a long splinter being pulled out from under a fingernail, and the other showing a character being impaled, were both unnecessarily long and suggest a sadistic intent by the director. Minor Freddy attributes a sexual disease to some bullies at that school. When the kids walk in on their sleeping foster parents, their dad is in boxers and their mom is in tight-fitting pajamas. Kissing is minimal. although a character rightly points out that because of the huge age difference of one couple, it is inappropriate. Later, one of the parents asks, "What is it with our boys and older women moderate?" The film begins with an openly effeminate male tour guide, and later one of the heroes, Pedro, admits he eyes. The Philadelphia bridge that falls apart during heavy traffic suggests the ubiquitous need for government spending to fix all of society's problems. The infinite floating doors in the cavernous superhero is another nudge by Hollywood to consider alternate realities, that is Marvel's multiverse and recent quantum verse. Superhero Darla chooses to save some kittens before saving their human owners. Age-inappropriate couples are presented as acceptable if it is consensual. Drawings eerily similar to occultic symbols are shown in Giovanna's prison cell. And during the end credits, Billy Batson and his family are back on the big screen. And even though their DC Universe fate is currently in limbo, that was not enough to kill my excitement for a sham fury of the gods. Not only do I have a long-standing love of the Shamley from their decades worth of comics, but I adored a sham at 2019. Not only was the great cast and crew from the original coming back, but they were adding Rachel Zegler, fresh off her film debut West Side Story at 2021A to the mix. This was a DC film seemingly made for me. So how did it turn out? Well, it's a bit of a good news, bad news situation. The good news is that some of the things that I liked about the original film are present, Kina Sham. Fury of the Gods set, and there are some great new additions. The bad news is that this sequel takes an unexpected step back in certain areas set and barely improves on the issues that I did have with 2019's A Sham Sham. Fury of the Gods continues the story of Fab Billy Batson, Shazam, portrayed by Zachary Levi in superhero form and by Asher Angel as a teenager, and finds him struggling with being a leader to his family of superpowered foster siblings and desperate to keep them together, and whose threat emerges in the Daughters of Atlas. Billy must fight to save his family and the world. The villains at the Daughters of Atlas are a slight upgrade from those featured Dina Shazama and Black Adam. Noticed how I said slight, though, because these antagonists are poorly written. Hey, Spa Helen Mirren, Calypso, Lucy Liu, and Anthea, Rachel Zegler, are three goddesses with some insane powers, and one of them even rides a dragon. This trio being more of a match for Billy and the Shaoli in terms of power level leads to some great action and genuine questioning if our heroes would be able to save the day. Where they are lacking comes into a character motivation and development portion. Rachel Zegler's Anthea was the only member of the trio that I understood, and the one with the best arc. It also helps that Zegler's performance elevates what she is given. I cannot believe that the creative team behind the sham Fury of the Gods had Dame Helen Mirren and Lucille Yu at their disposal and gave them what amounts to an embarrassment. Neither of their respective characters have sensible motivations or an arc to speak of. Liu and Mirren, like Zegler, does manage to elevate the material and make her character Hera intimidating in ways that do not have anything to do with her powers. The attempt to give Mirren's character her own narrative arc falls flat, and old Use Calypso is just your standard antagonistic figure. There are avenues with the villains and other characters that could have been worthy of exploring, but just are not. The antagonist scene's Fury of the Gods had so much potential given they are not in the comics. Well, these particular characters do not appear in the comics, and the writers could have seemingly done anything that they wanted with them. Instead, they chose to do very little, with Anthea being the standout of the much because she is given the most, and Rachel Zegler gives it her all with a delightful performance. This story could have used another rewrite. Buddha, there are things to like about it. Anthea is awesome. There are memorable moments of action, and I loved seeing more of Billy's family. More of his family was the one thing I wanted the Shia Fury of the God set to give me after the first film ended. A Mary, Bramfield superhero Maria Grace Carolyn Curry, Billy's older foster sister, who has superpowers of her own after Billy gifted them to his siblings Ina Sham. Gets more to do and an interesting arc for her character. Grace Carolyn Curry continues her great run after the Bot release of Fafaya 2022A and builds on the Mary that was previously established. Curry is a joy to watch, and honestly, if Mary was the central protagonist, a Fury of the Gods might have been more compelling because her character is struggling with the double life that in part makes the Shimali interesting. Jack Dylan Grazer S. Freddie Freeman, one of Billy's foster brothers and best of friend whose superpowered alter ego is portrayed by Adam Brody, also stands out, and the journey that is Shazam. Fury of the Gods that took the character on led to some of my favorite moments of the film. The theme of found familia is still extraordinarily strong, and that allows a sham Fury of the Gods to not only separate itself from most of the DC universe, but also to maintain at least some of the heart that its predecessor had so much of. Not to mention the writer's focus on this theme in a different way this time around, rather than retreading old ground, which helps further the development of the Shimali. As a whole, unfortunately, the story also weirdly sidelines Asher Angel as Billy Batson. One of the best things about Ashazama was that they balanced Angel and Levi's screen time, giving both sides of Billy their own arcs. That does not happen in a Sham Fury of the Gods. With Levi taking up most of the runtime, and the arc that his superpowered version of Billy is dealt here lacks the heart that both sides of the character had in the original. It is a real shame because I was sure that director David F. Sandberg and the writers would be able to build on their version of the character, one that is one of the better depictions of a DC superhero by DC Films to date. That does not happen, though, and with Angel's teenage version of Billy not given much to do. You are left with Levi, who starts off as funny but wears out his welcome in the first sham. A Zachary Levi was likable as the title character. However, a sham Fury of the Gods sees Levi and the writers suck mostly everything that was enjoyable about Billy Batson, Shazam out and make him so annoying to the point where I considered the superpowered version of Billy the worst character in the film. Shazam Fury of the Gods manages to be fey, though, especially for a film that is clearly trying to target a younger demographic. Jim Hansu is hilarious. Also the wizard Sham, which I was not expecting at all. He just is having a blast playing this character, and when he is being serious, Hansu commands your attention. His comedic moments serve as a nice contrast and are a delight. Megan Good and Faith Herman also get in on the action as the superhero and regular versions of Fad Darla Dudley, Billy's youngest and fellow superpowered foster sibling, providing some cute, humorous points during the narrative. If you are older, the humor might not always be your speed, but there was enough there to get laughs out of me, and I am positive that kids will have an amazing time with this. I also noticed that the funniest jokes in the film were not in any of the trailers that I had seen, which is a major plus. Finally, in terms of positives, the rise of the action ain't a sham Fury of the Gods, which is good and adds to the fun factor. You have Billy fighting a dragon, and it looks mostly convincing and cool. And then there are the other creatures conjured up by the Daughters of Atlas. Some of said creatures look so real that it would not surprise me if they were created through puppetry rather than CGI, though it was probably a mix of both. I loved seeing a Dame Helen Mirren at the age of 77 be as badass as she could be during a fight sequence with Zachary Levi's Sham. Seeing all the members of the Shaolian on the action in several ways was also this comic book fan's dream come true. We got a little bit of that in Tina Sham, a 2019, but goodness was it tomb to see these characters. I have grown up reading, have plenty of moments to shine as bit superheroes. When it comes to the wider DC universe, there is once again enough promising material here to build on, if the powers that be, James Gunn and Peter Safran, choose to revisit the character at some point. A sham Fury of the Gods, as Gunn has hinted at all along, does not appear to do too much that would seemingly prevent Billy and those around him from showing up again in the future. That is a relief because either is so much about these characters that could be explored going forward. Would it be disappointing not to see any of them again? Of course it would. Even though I did not love everything about Asham, Fury of the Gods, losing these characters would sting. Because I think there could be something great here if we get all of the heart from the original film back rather than just some and better writing for the villains. Sham Fury of the Gods could be the end of the road for this incarnation of the character. And while it may not be as good as the first film, it is a fine enough note to potentially leave on. There is also the possibility that we may see Billy and his family again at some point, and if we do, hopefully they build on what is good about this film, rather than the drawbacks it has. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, is the sequel to the lighthearted, likable superhero, Sham, the misfit orphan teen that acquired adult superhero powers after visiting a wizard's lair in the original. Asha Angel again plays Billy Batson as a kid, and Zachary Levi as the Shazam incarnation. I loved the first Sham, but the sequel doesn't add anything new or special to the superhero genre. The sequel falls short in terms of charm and coherence when compared to the original. The detachment between Billy and Shazam is apparent, and they fail to come across as a unified character, a defining feature of the first film. Despite attempting to go bigger and better, it loses the emotional depth that gave the original its heart. The sequel entirely abandons the childlike wonder that was unique and captivating previously. Billy Batson is back with his fellow Philadelphia foster kids to whom he gifted special powers are having a hard time working together. The media ridicules them as they often fail to save the day or cause the city massive destruction. Shazam is dealing with internal conflict and struggling to accept if he deserves to be a superhero and the group leader. There's even a joke about how there's already a superhero with the red suit with a lightning bolt on it, the Flash. The plot comes across as uninspired and unimaginative, revolving around the arrival of Hayes Spa, Helen Mirren, Calypso, Lucy Liu, and Anthea, Rachel Ziegler, and the Daughters of Atlas, who have come to Earth to reclaim a magic staff stolen from them long ago that will restore their powers. They enclose the city of Philadelphia in a bubble, which the heroes have to try and save. And that's the setup. Most of the appeal is Zachary Levi's performance as Sham. He continues to portray this character with humor and sincerity. He makes mistakes, bumbles around, and gets things wrong, but he's also endearing and relatable. The rest of the cast does an admirable job with their roles, but Freddie Jack Dylan Grazer stole the show. His comedic performance is consistently hilarious, perfectly balancing awkward teenage clumsiness and extreme overconfidence. His comedy is interwoven with heartwarming and awkward moments, creating a pleasant balance throughout. He maintains his charming persona, the legendary actresses Helen Mirren and Lucille. You can't even save their uninteresting characters I had no investment in. They have incredibly weak motivations, and one-dimensional personalities that carry no weight, there's nothing to invest in when it comes to an antagonistic force. The central theme and focus on family is well executed, which felt like a nod to the Fast and the Furious, exploring not only through the lens of Billy and his foster family, as well as the other foster children in the household, but also through the perspective of the story's antagonists. It provides a variety of approaches to examining family dynamics, both positive and negative, with each character offering the possibility of some degree of redemption. The story arc is entirely predictable, with most of the outcomes foreshadowed in advance. This may be partly due to the straightforward and linear nature of the story, which lacks complexity and surprises. The story feels pointless, as if there are no real consequences to the events that occur. It lacks any genuine emotional stakes. Towards the end of the third act, it tries tricking you into thinking there might be some, but almost immediately doesn't reverse. At no point I ever felt like the main characters were in danger. Fury of the Gods is a mixed bag when it comes to special effects. Some looked impressive, such as the manipulation of matter, causing city buildings to rearrange themselves, reminiscent of Doctor Strange in the MCU. Other effects were lacking, making them seem fake, almost like something out of a video game, which felt disconnected from the world of the film. Like the original, a diverse range of humor is present, including jokes, physical comedy, and sarcastic remarks, all intermingled. While some aspects of the humor are amusing, there are instances where other elements fall flat and feel forced. The direction wasn't as amusing or focused as the original, and the writing can be incredibly exposition-heavy. The camera work lacks creativity and makes the movie feel basic. The kid version of Billy Batson felt like an afterthought compared to the first film, which felt like a healthy balance between the two. The snark and comedy primarily work, and the character dynamics build a cohesive and share-worthy set of characters. After years of DC drudgery, a Shazam was a lovely surprise with a great pitch. Tom. Hanks is big, but with superpowers and more relaxed energy. Shazam coasts in that Zachary Levi charisma and straightforward after-school special messages inside a big superhero movie. Fury of the Gods is more of the same. A wonderful chill way to enter a spring break, complete with that Helen Mirren and Sham Fast Furious crossover we all wanted because Billy Batson, Asher Angel. Zachary Levi is not exactly a forward-thinking kid. The scepter he broke in Sham ends up in a museum where the daughters of Greek god Atlas, a Hesper, Helen Mirren, and Calypso Luciloue, steal it and get their powers restored. Yet another problem on top of Billy's busy play. Besides superheroing, his brothers, sisters Pedro Joven, Armand DJ Cotrona, Eugene Ian Chen, Ross Butler, Darla, Faith Herman, Megan Good, and Mary Grace Fulton are starting to branch off onto their own superhero adventures. Billy's best friend, bro. Freddie, Jack, Dylan Grazer, Adam Brody found a girl, and Rachel Ziegler he's interested in pursuing. But worst of all, Billy's 18th birthday is coming, meaning he ages out of the foster system, and he'll be forced to leave the only family he knows and loves. More isn't necessarily bad. Zachary Levi et al. Found a formula that works. So we get more of teenagers trying to be superheroes in all their humorous simplicity. The writers, Chris Morgan, Henry Gahan, mine that endless well of silliness thinking about teenagers forced into interplanetary fights with millennia-old villains, watching the kids try to write a formal negotiation letter to send to Helen Mirren's haste. Para is funny in an all-broken bar, but when Helen Mirren has to read said letter with the severity of an Academy Award performance, pure comedic perfection, and when Zachary Levi and Helen Mirren aren't conferring over Philly cheesesteaks, Jack Dylan Grazer continues to prove why he might be the secret sauce of Sham as success motor, mouthing his way into everyone's hearts. There's also an incredible Skittles runner that makes for the best marketing money since the Power Rangers Krispy Kreme donut spot. There are times the silly overpowers the plot, but those can be forgiven when more than enough goodwill is earned. Story-wise, these superhero movies figured out the easy way to make emotional stakes is to make their movies about family and putting that family in danger. Shazam quadruples down on that concept, making all sorts of family dynamics between their characters, including the sneaky, interesting daughters of Atlas. Once you try to figure out how Lucy Liu and Helen Mirren are related, the familiar themes hit a little harder here because of how Billy and everyone found each other. They know how precious and precarious family life can be. Fury of the Gods also finds some interesting ideas I wish they mined more, like how Freddy's ability to take punishment and keep going is maybe the most impressive superpower among the superheroes. But we don't have time because we have all manner of creatures showing up, including dragons, which Billy has to take on to protect the people he loves. And you know why superhero movies keep doing family stuff? It effing works. I was shocked how moved I was when Billy and his foster mom, Rosa Martins, have a quiet moment before the big battle because of how well the movie and actors sold Sham's family dynamics. Of course, There's fun action and end credit sequences in Shazam Fury of the Gods that many people will go to see, but they are doubly excited to be there for the really fun teenage superheroes and the comedy that comes from that. And never forget, superhero movies stole the family idea from the Augs, the fast, furious familia. At least Shazam had the guts to acknowledge it in this only near broken bar just in time for Fast 10 to bring in the West Side star actress to talk about family. In its second weekend, the film dropped 69% to $9.3 million, finishing second behind newcomer John Wick Chapter 4. It made $4.66 million in its third weekend, dropping to sixth place. Critical response on the reviewer website Rotten Tomatoes, 49% of 263. Critics' reviews are positive with an average rating of 5/6/10. The website's consensus reads, more unfocused and less satisfying than its predecessor, Shazam Fury of the Gods still retains almost enough of the source material's silly charm to save the day. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 47 out of 100 based on 49 critics indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences surveyed by Asinascaria gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale, while those pled by Apostrophe gave it a 78% positive score, with 64% saying they would definitely recommend it. Frank Seck of A Hollywood Reporter gave the film an average review, writing, like some children who aren't so cute anymore, after they've grown up a little, this follow-up lacks much of the appeal of its predecessor. While the film provides the elaborate action set pieces, colorful villains, and save-the-world plot mechanics expected of the comic book movie genre, some of the magic is missing. Hey Chicago, sometimes Sir Richard Rohr gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, writing, as we pick up Billy Sam's story about 4 years later, it quickly becomes apparent this is just going to be a by-the-numbers second tier venture with only a few small chuckles and 1 or 2 genuinely touching moments. The rest is just noise. Kevin Mara gave it 1 out of 5 stars, calling it a vacuous and disappointing sequel in writing. The tedious reincarnation trope is, however, the least of the narrative misfires in a film that borrows its central dramatic device from the Simpsons movie. Peter Bradshaw of Fata Guardiana gave it 3 out of 5 stars, saying we don't entirely break free of the superhero movie template, but Sham 2 has a just out-of-the-fridge orange juice taste that makes it likable. The Sydney Morning Herald, Sandra Hall, gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, saying the film does the job as an engaging send-up of superheroes and their affectations. It plays like a junior variation on Marvel's comic-heated Deadpool, with goofiness standing in for the F word, where Dandanda Gallows humor responses from cast and crew following the film's poor financial performance. Sandberg expressed surprise at its critical reception and said, after 6 years of Sham, I'm definitely done with superheroes for now. Levi said, of the film's reception, the audience score is still quite good, but the critic score was very oddly and perplexingly low, and people were insanely unkind. He also criticized the film's marketing accolades. Sham Fury of the Gods received nominations for Golden Fleece and Best Wild Posts at the 2023 A Golden Trailer Awards, at the 44th Golden Raspberry Awards. The film was nominated for a Worst Picture, a Worst Actress of Formiran, a Worst Supporting Actress of Furloo, and the Worst Screenplay Future. In January 2023, DC Films co-show saw James Gunn, and Safran said there was potential for Levi to reprise his role in the new franchise via DC University DCU, but a decision on the character had not been made. Sandberg said the next month that he was told his films did not contradict Gunn and Safran's plans, and that the character's potential return would depend on the film's reception. But following the film's disappointing box office performance, Levi cast doubt on his return. Shazam Fury of the Gods arrives with 2 strikes against it. Since it's not only a studio-produced sequel, but also a superhero movie made in 2023, one should expect a certain level of creative committee-mandated Mad Libs by monotony. Regardless of how one feels about the surprisingly decent Sham, the makers of that fine enough 2019 franchise starter, including director David F.A. Sandberg, toned down both the Dromalite cynicism and post-Spielberg sentimentality that's come to define the light-hearted James Gunn-style super projects that dominate the landscape. Sham Fury of the Gods meanders further in that direction. The first Shazam works as well as it is because it's mostly focused on two adolescent pipsqueaks, Billy Batson, Asher Angel and Freddie Freeman, Jack Dylan Grazer, who get sucked into a generic fantasy with some assistance from their extended family of orphan buddies. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, mostly sticks to the comic book formula that the first movie poked fun at. Despite another strong comedic performance from star Zachary Levi and some sporadic yaks throughout, it's stickier and less assured than the first Sham. But these leftovers still reheat well enough. Billy, Freddie, and their foster family members return to fight the latest vengeful dangling plot thread. This time, a trio of vindictive sorceresses called the Daughters of Atlas, led by Hesper, Helen Mirren, and Calypso Lucy Liu, who want to avenge their father Atlas, not in this picture. The identity of the third daughter is briefly shrouded in mystery. Billy's anxieties speak loudest for the Marvel family, as comics fans know them, a convivial group of twins whom, after yelling the magic word Sham, are granted godlike superpowers. But even the residents of Philadelphia, where most of Sham Fury of the Gods takes place, don't seem to know who these kids are. They refer to the Marvels as the Philly Fiascos, presumably because you can't successfully brand a DC Comics character as a Marvel anything. Billy also longs to know what his superhero name is. He gets some answers after he unexpectedly reunites with his grumpy guru mentor, the Wizard Jim Hansu, who somehow survived the events of the first Cheyenne. Don't worry if you forgot this last plot point. Billy and Freddie repeatedly joke about it. That kind of pre-tuned humor is only charming because it's finessed by the movie's ensemble cast members, especially the actors who play the punchy adult-age demigods that Billy and his family become when they say the magic word. Levi, who plays Billy's alter ego Sham, also known as Captain Marvel, and Adam Brody, who plays Super Bout. Freddie, a.k.a. Captain Marvel Jr., Elvis's favorite super guy, both stand out as adolescents struggling with thankless grown-up feelings and responsibilities. The movie's adult villains don't stand out, though Mirren still smirks like a champ. There are signs of a warmer and clever adolescent super drama throughout Shazam Fury of the Gods. Clearly unicated and frantically declined dialogue hints at Billy's prevailing fear of aging out of his family, especially now that he's about to turn 18 years old. His other family members also have lives to live, but we only catch glimpses of them whenever the plot stalls long enough to highlight likable but underdeveloped supporting characters like the unicorn-loving Darla Faith Herman or the closeted Pedro Joven. Armed, both of whom graze the heartstrings with focus group-level efficiency. A Sham Fury of the Gods might have been better if it were more focused on both Billy and Freddie and their hormonal anxieties. Billy dreams of wooing Wonder Woman in 2 scenes, and Freddie's got a crush on new Ganthia, Rachel Ziegler, who sadly has no chemistry with Grazer. Billy keeps saying he's all about family, but maybe he should focus on feuding with his surrogate brother and wrestling with his superego. That worked before, so why not an encore? Most of the big emotional moments lack cornball vigor. Though Levy still takes all the extra room he's given to create a goofy character who, like an actual teenager, doesn't have a filter or an or voice. This makes up for some things, especially in a movie where the big action scenes mostly sit there and the gags need to be both sped up and punched up. You have to want to hang out with the Philly Fiascos, and Levi is arguably the best combination of main character and lead performer in a recent superhero pick. It's too bad there are several other characters in this movie. And honestly, Captain Marvel's a tough character to get right. And if DC still can't nail a functionally grind Superman movie, what hope does Levi's Big Red she's have of surviving the latest DC implosion? The odds never really favored another live-action Shazam. But this new one will still do in a pinch. Shazam! Fury of the God is a perfect example of why casting and endings matter in film. Directed by David F. Sandberg and written by Henry Gahan and Chris Morgan. A Sham, Fury of the Gods, follows Billy's foster family as they defend Philadelphia from the Daughters of Atlas. A Sham A is one of my favorite films from the past decade. It meaningfully explored the consequences of rejection, trauma, and found family. The scene where Billy meets his mom in that film still haunts me to this day. Do a Sham A isn't the deepest film, but it was an honest film. Zachary Levi's performance perfectly heightened Billy's anger and still is fun to watch. A Sham. Fury of the God Citizen have a tenth of the nuance and maturity that a Sham A had, and it's a shame. But perhaps the biggest misfire in the film is Billy Batson. Zachary Levi brings back the tongue-in-cheek present in this first film, and yet it doesn't come across as charming. The writing isn't doing any favors in this department, as Billy's arc through the film is relegated to the sidelines until the third act finale. The film opens with Billy talking to his pediatrician about feeling like an imposter in his superpowered family. Hehasa taken on the role of being a leader. But the rest of the family seems to be less and less interested in being superheroes compared to him. He has placed his self-worth in being viewed as a hero because in 5 months' time he will age out of the foster system and may not be able to stay with the Vasquez family. This premise is loaded with dramatic subtext, and it would push Billy to grow. And it's set up wonderfully in the first 14 minutes of the film. And then it's sidelined by the arrival of the Daughters of Atlas, who long to take back the power of Sham that was stolen from their father by the wizard. And this becomes the primary focus of the film for the next 80 minutes. Where the first film placed Billy front and center, even allowing him to go on a journey to find his mom in the second act that had no impact on the plot with Dr. Shana Asham. Fury of the Gods and never offers this reprieve to its main character. And it shows because Billy is nearly always seen as the transformed Shazam. Asher Angel, who plays the real Billy, has less than 7 minutes of screen time this time around, despite Billy being in nearly every scene. It's tragic, because Angel really tapes into the vulnerable side of Billy in his performance, and it matches the tone of the character arc really well, but the film doesn't make that character argue its core focus. When the Daughters of Atlas show up, Sham doesn't have the time to reflect, and instead just becomes a loud mouth, and it doesn't completely work. It especially doesn't work when the ending relies on the audience having a reverence for Billy, who has been unlikable throughout the entire film and wasn't particularly likable in the last film. Billy is a fascinating character because we watch him grow and mature, and when that growth is cut so we can worship him as a hero, it doesn't work. This contrasts with the great character work on display with every other member of the Vasquez foster family. Freddy is given his own teenage romance plot, which highlights his own insecurities as a disabled teen. Mary is an adult, and it's reflected both in the story and in her visual design. Firstly, Mary feels the considerable weight of being the oldest kid, still a part of the family, offering advice to Billy and also talking about finding a way to support the family outside of being a superhero. And from a visual perspective, Grace Carolyn Curry portrays both Mary and superhero Mary, showing how Mary has grown up to be an adult, whereas the other kids still transform into adult superheroes when they shout Shazam. It's a subtle change, but it highlights the thought that went into each and every member of the family. Speaking of performances, each Vasquez family member is empowered by great performances. Jack Dylan Grazer is wonderful in the role of Freddy Freeman, giving the character a lovable performance that doesn't oversell the nerdy part of Freddy. Ross Butler, Adam, Brody, and DJ Codrona each capture the behaviors of the kids they play in their superhero adult form. Faith Herman is once again great as the immediately charming Darla, and Megan, good captures. her night macaronvi and outgoing mannerisms seemingly effortlessly as Darla's superhero form. Martillis and Cooper Andrews once again immediately melt hearts as Rosa and Victor Vasquez, the foster parents of the family. The performances of each family member and the chemistry between them all enhance the family dynamic that is so often missing from the script this time around as well. Rachel Ziegler is stellar in the role of Anthea, and her chemistry with Jack Dylan Grazer makes for a romance subplot that is cute and believable. The film may struggle with its main plot, but the subplots revolving around Freddie Anthea and the wizard played by Jim Hansu once again worked really well to develop the core themes of the film while also being very fun to watch. A Shazam Fury of the Gods is yet another superhero film to suffer from uneven visual effects. Some effects like sandstorms, transformations of a location, or the appearance of a dragon are seamless and fit the film perfectly. There are a plethora of locations created entirely through CGI, and thanks to the integration of physical objects in the foreground, you don't notice the artificial set. The Sham headquarters is a great example of this, where tables, couches, and random items create a space that feels tangible because it reflects the kids that live there. The blend of CG and production design allows these spaces to feel real. Other effects, however, look like plastic and are incorrectly virtually lit. It's a shame because those uneven effects affect the biggest action sequences the most. But for all the missteps in the visual effects, the direction and editing of these action sequences are great. Sandberg understands the importance of showing civilians in peril in creating the need for a superhero, and it's something missing from most modern superhero films today. Michelle's editing ensures that the geography of these action sequences is kept clear, and it makes for some exciting battles, especially in the third act. The first Shazam movie from 2019 was praised for its lighter, brighter worldview, its Gen Z bio, and for being generally unencumbered by the portentous and spurious gloom of earlier DC films. This is true of the sequel too, only it's hard not to notice that it could simply be fitting into another boilerplate model. There's a cheeky gag about the Avengers, a group of superheroes, all with cartoony character traits and a sprinkling of funny lines, wind up battling an intergalactic invasive menace, culminating in the usual spectacular but unserious CGI Herb and Ben. Apocalypse, with people saying things like this, ends tonight. Billy Batson, played by Asher Angel, is the teen kid in Philadelphia living with foster parents and foster siblings who, with the cry of Sham, has the ability to transform himself into a clean-cut but anxious superhero whose imposter syndrome worries are not helped by the fact that he often makes an awful mess of crime fighting. He is played by Zachary Levi with the chiseled look Mad Men's Don Draper. With him is disabled friend Freddie Freeman, played by Jack Dylan Grazer, who, like all the kids, has a superhero alter ego. His is smirkingly self-aware Captain Everpower Adam Brody. Interestingly, it is Freddie who appears almost always as his vulnerable non-superhero teen self, and so upstages Billy Shazam. Billy and his friends must battle two Greek gods, daughters of Atlas, who want absolute control over planet Earth. They are H-Spa and Calypso, played by Helen Mirren and Lucille, with their own absurd outfits and pointy headdresses. Back in high school, Freddie is being bullied by giant blonde jocks but falls hard for new classmate Anthea, Rachel Ziegler from a Spielberg's West Side Story, who has a secret of her. This new Sham film is cordial with a puppyish good nature and an awareness of its own silliness. It gestures towards diversity with a gay character. Although we might not stop at one as the Sham franchise develops, there are some nice lines here in Mirren. Lou and Jim. Hansu as the ancient wizard have some fun with their roles, albeit while looking as if the subject of what they're having for supper after the day's shooting isn't far from there. Mines, I have to say that we don't entirely break free of the superhero movie template, but Sham 2 has a just out-of-the-fridge orange juice taste that makes it likable. A Sham Fury of the Gods is released on the 16th of March in Australia, and 17th of March in the US, UK, and Ireland. Why did they give Zachary Levi a haircut for Shazam? Fury of the Gods, 4 years ago in the Glade. First Shazam, Levi played a kid in a superhero's body, and the movie was smart and witty enough to come off as a caped version of Big. Levi's look was a major part of it. Shazam, with that cheesy lightning bolt and gold belt and white Italian restaurant tablecloth of a cape, didn't resemble other recent comic book film heroes. He was more like something out of the 40s, and Levi sealed the deal with his big popping eyes and ingenuous grin. He was, after all, playing a 14-year-old inside, as well as a hair that topped off his boyish spirit. It was dark and shiny and stood up 1.5 inches from his head. A do-as superhero stylized in its way as the old Superman, the apostrophe S dot in Shazam. Fury of the Gods, Levi is back, a little older inside Shazam's alter ego. The foster kid Billy Batson is now pushing 18, but that comic disconnect between the bulk-up dude in his red suit with his limitless powers and the teenager who's in over his head is still somewhat on display. Levi once again carries the movie, though, with the shade less of that infectious buoyancy. His hair has been tweaked onto a slightly shorter, more conventional cut. From certain angles, it's almost a fade. And while the difference isn't huge, and it may sound like I'm carping over nothing, the new hair changes his aura. He seems less wide-eyed, less winningly goofy, less stylized. That's true of the movie as B. Well, Fury of the Gods is one of those superhero sequels that goes through the paces, presenting us with the story that's meticulously convoluted and weightless, only to ratchet up the CGI, as if that were the film's way of testifying to its major popcornness. Plenty of comic book sequels do that, of course, but the first Shazam was a special case. It had a breezy, loose charm that felt not so much superhuman as good old human. It somehow sidestepped the digitally told blockbuster cynicism, but Fury of the Gods falls right into it. The film isn't terrible, but it's busy, formulaic, and rather joyless. The Shazam saga has been given an expensive haircut, but it's lost a lot of its flavor in the process. Part of that is it's a tough encore to bring off. Origin stories can be stage setters with the more exciting action yet to come. Just think of Batman Begins relative to The Dark Knight. But sometimes the origin story is the main course. Shazam was about Billy trying to wrap his teenage head around the fact that he was a superhero gifted with unimaginable powers from Jim Hansu's Wizard. He spent the heart of the movie figuring out how to use those powers, and also, like an urchant delinquent Clark Kent, keeping his vulnerable identity under wraps. Now that the cat is out of the bag and Shazam has been joined by his entire house full of foster kids turned superheroes, they're a bit like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Blander Jr. Justice League Asher Angel, as Billy is older now, but he's further from the center of the movie, almost an adjunct character. Our heroes are still going up against world-class villains. At least if you look at the casting, a Helen Mirren, a Lucilu, and Rachel Ziegler play Hesper, Calypso, and Anthea, the daughters of Atlas, who have come to Earth to take back the power of the gods from Shazam and his crew, who in their view stole that power. You'd think that Helen Mirren, a true I could listen to her read a phone book actor if we still had phone books, could make something out of this, but as soon as Hera and Calypso make their entrance, hidden under knights' helmets in a museum where they've come to steal a broken magic staff from its exhibition case, the two come off like troublemakers on an ominous but generic mission. If you have followed my work for any amount of time, you know I have quite the relationship with the first Alma movie from 2019. I had mixed feelings on the film and ended up going rotten on my score. As one of the first to go negative and the first female critic to do so, the world went insane and death threats came. The FBI had to be notified, and it was a genuinely traumatic experience. Now we have the sequel, Fury of the Gods, and I honestly struggle with what to do about it. On one hand, I could recuse myself for my own mental health. I don't have to cover it for an outlet, so why put myself through that? On the other hand, isn't that letting the idiots win. Eventually, I decided to go with the latter and was able to find a critic screening here in Austin, which I attended with my friend Asha Chandler. Check out his terrific YouTube channel for lots of great rankings and reviews of superhero movies and more. Now, I've seen the film. I'm left with decidedly mixed feelings once again. I do think director David F. Sandberg improves upon the first film in some ways and fixes some of the problems I had with it. The tone is much more balanced and consistent throughout the film. Some might say that makes it more bland, and I don't disagree, but overall it was a positive. They also did a better job of connecting the performances of Asher Angel and Zachary Levi. They felt more like the same person, which was a problem in the first Shazam. I also enjoyed the family spirit, particularly the foster parents, Rosa and Victor Vasquez, played by Marty Millins and Cooper Andrews, respectively. There was also a cameo, which I had a fun time with, and I guess the studio has spoiled in the trailer as he or she is a favorite character of mine. I'm glad I got to see him or her one more time in this universe. So where does the movie not work? Well, actually, I shouldn't even say that because it works fine, but it's all completely average and something we've seen a million times before. If you want a fine superhero movie with likable actors and disposable action, a Shazam Fury of the Gods will scratch that itch. If you are hoping for something more than it won't deliver, even the characters' superpowers are bland and nondescript and all the same for the entire family. The cast, including Helen Mirren and Lucille as the daughters of Atlas, are fine as villains, but bland and forgettable. Jim Hounsou is involved in the story, but not given much to do. Rachel Ziegler is wasted in a boring role. I don't know if you love the original. I'm not sure what you will think of Shazam Fury of the Gods. As someone who didn't, I did see some improvement, and I liked its heart. A family, but it's nothing we haven't seen before a million times. In the end, whatever. Go see it if you want or don't, and leave me out of it. Shazam Fury of the Gods is the sequel to the 2019 film Asha, directed by David F. Sandberg. Sandberg is a director I greatly admire as he is a YouTuber turned Hollywood director, and he impressed me even more when he made such an endearing and heartfelt blockbuster with the Shazam. However, I was dreading the sequel as the marketing was not promising in any way. The sequel looked like a movie that the audience has seen countless times. And in an era where a superhero movie or show comes out every week, we have no room for safe and derivative superhero films. And to my dismay, a Shazam Fury of the Gods at those dreadful expectations due the sequel takes place a few years after the original, and we pick up with Billy Batson Asher Angel, who seems to be comfortably fighting crime with his Shazam family. However, the public views them more as screw-ups. This coincides with Billy's internal struggle with imposter syndrome, as numerous other superheroes can do Billy's job and do it much better. Unfortunately, Billy's concerns don't stop with his life as a superhero. He is also turning 18 and is concerned with aging out of the foster system and ultimately fearing being alone once more. Billy is trying to hold on as tightly as possible to his newfound family and is deeply paranoid about his family moving in other directions. On paper, this all sounds like a great direction for a sequel. There is plenty of human struggles for Billy to overcome in this film, but despite so much going on for the protagonist, Billy is still hard to find interesting. A significant reason is a dichotomy between Billy and his superhero counterpart, Zachary Levi. Zachary Levi and Asher Angel do not feel like they are playing the same character. They think entirely differently personality-wise. Asher Angel plays a nearly 18-year-old Billy who seems pretty tepid, more mature, and slightly controlling. When Billy turns into a superhero, Zachary Levi plays the character as quirky, loud, emotional, and even charmingly dumb at times. It doesn't seem to be a creative choice to have Billy feel more stern and mature as a kid and more alive and childlike as a superhero. Although that could be interesting, there is no reason to suspect this is a purposeful choice for the character. It just feels like an oversight in the writing and direction. Billy Batson is also hardly in the Get movie. 80 to 85% of the film is Zachary Levi's Billy, which feels poetic because it shows precisely what is wrong with the movie. It is superhero first, humanity second. A considerable charm to it. The first film is Billy being a kid simply trying to search for his mother, which grants Asher Angel a lot of screen time. There is one scene that had me emotional, which is between Asher Angel's Billy Batson and his foster moms, where they have an authentic moment addressing Billy's abandonment issues. Unfortunately, these scenes are incredibly sparse, and it made me miss the first M. Even more, Billy's flawed character is significantly hampered because the person who steals the movie is Freddie Jack Dylan Grazer. Freddie and his superhero counterpart, Adam Brody, feel like the same person. There is no jarring switch when Freddie turns into a superhero. But ironically, I wish I got more of Adam Brody as a superhero. The idea of an insecure, disabled kid being able to turn into a superhero to feel more alive also seems like a far more interesting character to delve into. Jack Dylan Grazer also plays Freddie in a way that's so likable, earnest, and kind, while simultaneously being able to pull off the more dramatic scenes. Freddie also has an exciting and somewhat off-putting relationship with Anthea, Rachel Ziegler, who plays somewhat of an antagonist. Speaking of the villains, they are one of the weak shining points in the movie. Anthea's sisters, Calypso, Lucy Liu, and Shpera, Helen Mirren, wants to seek vengeance on humanity and risk to war their old realm. While Lucilu and Helen Mirren are both excellent actors, the villains they play are ridiculously shallow, and by the numbers, their motives are shockingly primary and do not get much character depth outside their primary motivations. By the time the climax arrived, I felt underwhelmed, since the climactic battle revolves around whether the protagonist will make it out alive. I knew Billy was never in danger because he's the titular character, and DC would most definitely wish to use these characters more in the future. I admit this isn't mainly the movie's fault, though, and this outside perspective does ruin it. The ending does pack some emotional punch, but it is entirely ruined by a nonsensical and ridiculous cameo at the end. It's a completely random day of sex maca and soiled what could have been an emotional end to the film, and the Shama franchise, a part of me is somewhat glad that this movie is underperforming critically and is projected to underperform financially. It shows the industry that this type of superhero film is no longer acceptable and that studios must try harder. One theory people have for this movie's underperforming is that the superhero genre is too packed, which can lead to fatigue. I reject this theory for a couple of reasons, though. The superhero genre does not exist. There is no such thing as a genre of a superhero movie. Do not believe the phrase superhero fatigue either. There's nothing to mainly get sick of in terms of superheroes, because the beauty of those types of films is that they can tell any story with any genre and be unique in their way. There is, however, such a thing as mediocre fatigue. Too often, these days, superhero films are falling into a formula of fighting generic bad guys and are engulfed with CGI nonsense. The surprise factor is what the cameo will be and how it will tie into a bigger picture. The superhero film industry is losing the core value of why a movie should exist, which is put to tell a good and meaningful story. I sympathize with Sandberg because this film has a heart, albeit it can be hard to find in an alternate universe. We got a movie that central focus was Billy's past trauma of abandonment and who is simultaneously able to flesh out a meaningful character arc where Billy realizes that he is good enough in a world filled with various other superheroes. Unfortunately, it's buried beneath a slew of superhero tropes, heavy exposition, and an emphasis on spectacle over storytelling. Despite many criticisms of the film, I wouldn't label it as bad. The movie can be pretty entertaining as it's very well-paced, action-packed, and never leaves me at a point where I would be bored. The comedy in the film mainly works with one scene involving a written letter being the standout. The cast and crew also have great chemistry together, So if there is a future for Sham in this upcoming DC slate, I wouldn't mind it. The problems don't lie so much in the characters themselves, although Billy could use a bit of improvement, and I think there could be more potential for them. All in all, the film isn't that bad and isn't undeserving of a viewing. Score 2.55. Despite my many criticisms, the movie is not all that bad. But again, that's precisely the issue. Do a sham fury of the gods is concerningly derivative. There is nothing worse than a movie not being all that bad or all that great. This is a harmless or family fun action-packed film in a vacuum. However, as a whole, this movie is incredibly dangerous to the superhero film climate, as it shows general audiences that they're not worth watching. The prevalent issue is when a good superhero film does eventually come out. Not many people may want to go see it due to movies like A Sham, Fury of the Gods, who could be catastrophic for the superhero film industry. The second film in the series, Sham, Fury of the Gods, is a light entertainer with lots of action. Coming 4 years after the original film, it is again directed by David F. Sandberg, where Zachary Levi and Dasher Angel reprise their roles as Sham Billy. Batson. It's an open secret that Billy Batson, a confused teenager, turns into Sham via magic. The film begins with regular heroics by Sham and his extended family of buddies who also return to the cast. This time they are against the Daughters of Atlas, Ahez, Helen Mirren, Calypso, Lucilu, and Anthea, Rachel Ziegler, who want to avenge their father's death and are not happy at children stealing the power of. The movie revolves around two crazy teenagers, Billy Batson, Asher, Angel, and Freddie Freeman, Jack Dylan Grazer. Despite the secrecy, Freddie boasts of his association with Sham, which lands him in trouble. He show-offs at the wrong place in front of the wrong person, resulting in a power struggle. The humor, the fun, and the teenage fascinations are the reasons watch it in the cinema or whichever streaming platform starts featuring it. One can see Sham fight a dragon, unicorns coming to the rescue against the monsters, and the cool hideout of the gang in the 20-hour, 10-minute movie. Every member struggles with grown-up feelings and responsibilities, and the steps they take to control are hilarious. Billy's fears of turning 18 and losing his foster family are constantly mentioned in the dialogues, as well as his obsession with Wonder Woman. Billy's grumpy guru, the wizard, Jim. Hansu has a meteor role this time, but it is Helen Mirren's performance as H, Parrot, that stands out. You and your friends will get to know more about Greek mythology through the film, since Sham is associated with Greek gods. The magical pen is funny, and the way Sham dictates a letter to the terrifying trio would bring a smile to many faces. The daughters try hard to finish the kids, but the resistance they face from confused adults is remarkable. One gets to see less of the foster kids and parents in the film, but the powers of Sham really let us miss them. And entertainer for the whole family. It would make the kids feel more like Sham, who has the body of a hero, but the mind of a kid at the trailers for Sham. Fury of the Gods weren't the greatest, so I never bothered going to see it in the cinema. Judging by its box office, most of the audience felt the same way. Barely a month after its release, the movie is now on Vudu, so I figured I would give it a watch. And admittedly, it was far better than expected, and I think I even prefer it to the first film. The script doesn't always work, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't laugh at several points, and the film is just good-natured fun. The visual effects are impressive, and I'm a sucker for movies with monsters in them, and this has plenty. The cast do their best, and Helen Mirren never phones it. And even in a movie this silly, she brings some gravities. Zachary Levi is once again appealing as Sham, although he seems to act like more of Kid than his alter ego, Billy Batson. In this tale, Billy is struggling to let go of his abandonment issues, desperate to keep his family when it seems like life is pulling them in opposite directions. It gives the movie enough heart so we still care about him, and the family are all appealing to, with Freddie once again having all the best lines. I do wish there was a scene with Freddie changing into his superhero form and dropping bullies from a great height to broken bar, but I guess that wouldn't be very heroic. It's a fast-paced 2 hours, and although the action is the usual comic book movie stuff, I did enjoy the bridge rescue scene, which felt like an old school Superman sequence. I'm sure you already know, but in case you didn't, I'll give you a spoiler warning of the cameo at the end was one of the highlights, especially using the character's epic theme tune, which was arguably my favorite moment of the entire film. The biggest issue with the film is that it now feels utterly pointless with James Gunn taking over the gal and any of the other upcoming movies. Like Aquaman 2 feel like a waste of time, as I'm pretty sure they aren't going anywhere, as none of these characters have movies announced anytime soon. Luckily, this works as a standalone feature, and although a few things are teased, it doesn't ruin the enjoyment for this movie. The script, co-written by Henry Gann, who wrote the first film, and Chris Morgan, who has written 6 of the 9 Fast and Furious films, doesn't allow Mirren to cut loose the way Kate Blanchett did in Thor Ragnarok or Mark Strong did in Shazam. A tasty villain in that a comic book movie doesn't have to scale the visionary heights of Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, but he or she should sustain a certain tasty depth of evil ego. Mirren, I'm sorry, is wasted, and so is Lucy Liu, whose chill ferocity is reduced to a kind of one-note snit. Rachel Ziegler from West Side Story has a more complicated role with more of a relationship to our heroes, but that too should have been further developed. Anthea's interactions with Freddy, Jack Dylan Grazer, the foster nerd who walks with a cane, have a high school comedy vividness reminiscent of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. David F. Sandberg, the director of the first Shazam, is back. And this is the place you can feel his puckish spirit, but that soon falls by the wayside. Besides, how much can we care about a magic staff that looks like a stage prop, which is broomstick with an energy-saving light bulb inside? Fear. Not, there is also a golden apple and a dome placed over Philadelphia. And there are monsters, starting with a dragon, that pops up for no good reason. In its spindly way, it looks like it came out of the same wood shop that crafted Groot and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. There is also an explosion of what looked like giant grapevines, also would like out of the pods of which erupt the crew of the Beasties, an ashing Cyclops, an ashing Griffin, and more Gnashers. And there are unicorns, but not rainbow-colored angelic ones, dark and sturdy ones that look like stallions. By the time all these creatures have shown up, we feel like we need a flow chart to calculate the hierarchy of power. Magic? Staff greater than beasties, unicorns equals dragon. The villains are defeated. The mythology is fulfilled. But the real story here is that a superhero saga that seemed to hold out possibilities of life-size quirkiness and delight winds up getting squashed into the shape of any other superhero franchise. The force that does that is the true power that needs to be defeated. When this first AMA film came out, it was at this sad moment, for there had been a hard pivot away from the dark and brooding movies like Batman v Superman towards something a little lighter, and I for one liked the Change A and Aquaman were not perfect films. They were at least supremely entertaining, but I wondered if lightning could strike twice, because much like last time, a Shazam has to do some pair work after a string of failures. So, to set the scene, since Billy Asher Angel was given the powers of Sham Zachary, Levi, by the last Council of the Wizards, also called Sham Jim Hansu. He has tried to be a superhero. However, he is still just a kid if ever there is an imposter syndrome. It is this. However, life does not give him the time and space to process this change, because the 2 daughters of Atlas, Calypso, Lucilu, and Hesper Helen Mirren have returned to Earth. They are there to rectify their position and see Billy and his family as a threat and an affront to everything they stand for. From the start, I have to say that it was odd walking into a film that is part of an extended universe, but that it is about to get partially or entirely reckoned out of existence. It is one of the dangers with a bigger cinematic university where you have to put stock into these characters. But what happens when you know from outside production forces that none of it will matter in the long run? This is the struggle that a Shazama is dealing with for its entire runtime, for better or worse. If there is one word I would use to summarize this film, it is a fun. Everyone in the cast gets to have comedic moments, and it was fun being an audience enjoying every moment. I was unsure how it would all go and if the adults playing children bit would work for the whole runtime, but it did. I was concerned that the kids would get a bit overwhelmed by their superhero identities. Now the entire family had become heroes. But there was a good balance of time between the two extremes, which is good because the film is significantly funnier when it is just the kids. I would have liked to see a bit more of Asher Angel, seeing those insecurities through his eyes and not just Zachary Levi's. As for the narrative, it is primarily straightforward, if a little convoluted in places. A lot is going on, but all you need to know is that because of actions in the first film, the magical wall between the gods and the human realm has broken down, and now the daughters of Atlas have come back to Earth to claim the power lost to them. I like that. They started out with some incredibly menacing powers, but that falls away to being just general heavy punchers. I liked how Anthea Rachel Ziegler's powers felt like an evolution of what we saw in a Doctor Strange, but with a new twist. I quite liked Helen Mirren in this film, who very much pulled off menacing, but I would have liked it if Lucilu could go a bit more into the character. I loved all the production and set design, with the highlight being how the cave looks with all the kids decorating it. Also bless Steve everything he does, and his not understanding when not to write something down. It was also one of the better designed dragons I have seen in a while, though the Fast and the Furious A joke landed better than the Game of Thrones as a reference. Also, some of that design gets lost in the third act, which feels much more bloated than the rest of the film. But a solid musical score can help glide over a number of issues. In the end, do we recommend a Shah Fury of the gods? Yes, we do. Now, this is not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. However, it is a fun film that understands its core premise and makes the most of it. The cast is there, the emotional moments hit, and it is always nice getting to see Helen Mirren have some fun in an outrageous costume. If you like it, a sham fury of the gods, we recommend to you a Wonder Woman. Zachary Levi's smile as he more often than not face planted the pavement while he learned all about his newfound powers in this first Shazam. Perfectly summed. The whole endeavor up warm, goofy, and fun with a dose of charm and heart too. Mile wide, it managed to show up the rest of the entire slate of live-action DC movies for what they were, a cold, hard, and absolutely nowhere near as fun as they really should have been. If there was one complaint to be leveled at that origin story, it was that while the wonderful family dynamic element of it, part child wish fulfillment, but also part serious look at non-traditional families and the impacts these can have on children of all ages. Was so touching yet incredibly funny. The minute Mark Strong left behind his own empathetic rationale for being the film's antagonist, again related to his own view of family, and the film turned into another boring CG creature-drenched smackdown in its third act, it lost everything that made the first two acts so unique and so welcome. And so sadly, while the heart, the charm, and the family are all back in this sequel, it makes the exact same mistakes all over. Again, only much more so this time a broken bar. A Billy and the rest of the ball. Sham Billy, I wish I could take credit for that. But thank you, Internet, for that. Pathy, Nom, Plume have now got their superpowered lives down. Pat, as some are fully embracing their powers and living up to their superhero potential with relish Jack Dylan Glazer's Freddy, some are struggling with aging out of the foster care system and needing to find a way to make a living. Carolyn Grace Cassid's Mary, while others, sadly, all the other kids just bought her around in the background, almost managing to make some other interesting points about thorny issues of adolescence and burgeoning sexuality. Chauvin Armin's Pedro, if only they weren't so underwritten. But all is not well just underneath the Surfacia broken bar. Billy is desperate to keep the family and the superhero team together, mainly due to his own sense of inadequacy and imposter syndrome, but also his own sense of his impending adulthood and therefore his own enforced departure from the foster care system. And he is holding on to them all too tight. Also, their home city of Philadelphia isn't too enamored by their adventures, or more is the point their mishaps labeling the superhero brood the Philadelphia Fiascos, and as if there was room in it too, or her film for anything else. The Daughters of the God Atlas. Helen Mirren, Lucy Liu, and Rachel Ziegler have returned to the earthly realm in search of the Gymno's magical staff from the previous film so that they can return their own godly kingdom to its rightful glory, or a broken bar. And so yet again the cast are the main reason the film has as much charm and heart that it is. Olivia is a brilliantly affable personality, and his cocky doofus of a man-child is stuffed full of his own winning nature. He does well flitting between dropping pop culture zingers, hey Khaleesi, and sympathetically portraying a convincing conflicted adolescent, unsure of every part of who he is with all the panic and misplaced absurdity of an actual teenager. In fact, all the kids here are rounded out by faith. Herman's Darla and Deanne Chen's Eugene A. are an absolute joy, especially Herman and her blissful Annette, utterly joyful space cadet, who is a beautiful ray of sunshine that lights up the screen whenever she's shown. There is, of course, as much fun as you would imagine seeing veterans Mirren and Liu, anything that's not made of computer pixels around them. The leading ladies being as utterly delicious, dispatching hundreds of hapless victims as they are, spouting mythical mumbo-jumbo as if their very lives depended on it. However, poor old Rachel Ziegler suffers from having a horribly bland persona deposited on her. And while she really tries, her Auntie just has none of the spice or the vigor of her two siblings. And while Martellans and Cooper Andrews as the family's parenting team are just as adorable and wonderful as they were before, they've been given an awful lot less to do this time around. And the film suffers as a result of a broken bar, which is pretty much how all the rest of the runtime can be summed up. The plotting is Superhero 101, with none of the richness of actual Greek mythology making its way into the state and labored narrative that revolves around stolen powers and simple revenge. There's little of the wit and inventiveness of the characterizations in the generic action scenes, and by the time the entire city is being engulfed by the roots of a huge tree while spewing hundreds of creatures from myth and legend into the city streets to wreak mayhem, all of which is presided over by a dragon the size of a couple of city blocks. It's all just so generic and so bland that it's now greeted with a simple shrug of the shoulders and a wistful desire just to see more of the small children cracking wise around the family dinner table instead. It's not bad per se, but as with the first film, when everything descends into a CG-drowned morass of a stuff, it simply loses all of its personality. A Sandberg. And his writing team just couldn't find a way to fold the much more interesting personal stories and struggles of their lovely band of charming characters into the more overt superhero elements of the film. And with this one having so much more of those superhero elements and less of the simpler, funnier, and more endearing character beats, the film overall just suffers in comparison to its predecessor. Throw in the requisite superhero cameos and gags. The mid-credit sting ends on a particularly nice IFOP, and it's very much more of the same, only once again proving that for so much of today's superhero output, less is more. And that sadly more is actually less. Still charming and fun then, but just not as much as the first film was a broken bar in this movie. It's been 2 years since the end of the first Shazam. The timeline is a bit complicated. Also, I was surprised to realize it's been 4 years of real time. Billy Batson Sham Captain Every Power Jr. is now a senior in high school and is struggling to keep a superpowered foster family from Leah together, feeling like they're drifting apart. And justifiably that he's not competent enough to handle superheroing on his own. The superhero gig isn't going so well either. The family's clumsy efforts have undoubtedly saved lives, but have also caused so much collateral damage, or at least failed to prevent it, that the press has dubbed them the Philadelphia Fiascos. Plus, several of the kids are losing interest in it. Things get complicated, however, when the Daughters of It losses show up. It turns out that the Council of Wizards that gave Billy his powers, and the Black Adam, by the way, stole that power from the Greek gods, destroying their realm. And at last, three daughters seek to steal the Sham family's powers in the Golden Apple from the 11th labor of love, Heracles to resto it. Except one of them, Calypso, better known for imprisoning Alcée on her island for 7 years, is more interested in getting revenge on the human world, and things soon get much worse. As an aside, both the names and the powers of the Daughters of Atlas bear very little similarity with the original Greek myths. For example, Ante is supposed to be a daughter of Phas Zeus, and she's supposed to be the goddess of flowers, not the goddess of rearranging. The City Inception style. The other two aren't much better. That said, I did appreciate how the movie plays with mythology and folklore in more self-aware ways, like how Freddy says he knows all about magic, but then starts seemingly quoting a Dungeons Dragons. And the wizard tells him he has no idea what he's talking about, or how unicorns are more like a classical nightmare-style creatures, which A, are actually the king of beasts, and B, absolutely hate humans but can still be tamed with the ghee. Power of gratuitous product placement skittles. Taste the rainbow, mother at $%. So insane. Battles and wacky hijinks ensue as you would expect for DC's more comedic offerings. However, the ending of the movie was a broken bar interesting. They went a lot further down the self-sacrifice road than I expected, but they pulled off a twist that felt too much like a literal Ada sex machina, except they then hilariously tied it back to what seemed like a throwaway line in the middle of the movie. I guess I'd say I like the idea of what they did, but the execution didn't quite land right. And some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.